WCVB's legal analyst Martha Coakley is live with us now. And Martha, thank you so much for joining us. Walk us through what happens next here for Bob Kraft.
Well, most likely he will appear in Florida, or his presence could be waived, as we know, if the judge and the prosecutor agree. He will enter a plea of not guilty. That's totally expected at this stage of the game. And from there on in, there will be the exchange of discovery. The prosecution will have to let his defense lawyers know what their evidence is. They've already said to some extent they have extensive evidence and they have videos, but they will turn over all of that evidence. And then the process begins. Will there be an opportunity for a trial? Many of these cases at this level will often enter into plea agreements of some sort. So it's a little bit further down the road, but this case will now take its progress in the courts like every other case where charges like this are issued.
So, Martha, since it's a misdemeanor charge in Florida, is it possible that Mr. Kraft would never have to appear in court?
At some stage, he will have to appear either for trial or to enter a plea of guilty. The court may require him to be there before that. And as we know, in some instances, the court might require him to actually be there to enter a plea himself.
So, Martha, this was part of a much larger human trafficking crackdown, and Bob Kraft's part was not part of that. That investigation took months. Let's talk more about that and the separation of these two things.
Of course, and I'm guessing, knowing what federal agencies were involved, the extensive number of different agencies, including the IRS, for instance, that this was focused on the business end of it. Human trafficking is a very lucrative business. It's often run by organized crime. It is something that needs that kind of multi-state and federal organization. But in the meantime, since those rings have also been focused on, there has been an increase in looking at the market end, the demand end, and so it would be natural in bringing a big case like this with an extensive investigation and the kind of number of indictments that are issuing here, that they would also look at bringing charges against those people who are the market, so to speak, for these services in human trafficking.
So with that said, Martha, let's talk about penalty range here. What's likely in this kind of a scenario?
Well, it's frankly quite possible that it could involve a fine, at most maybe some kind of probationary period. These are misdemeanors. They're most likely first offenses for most of the people involved here. These often and can get resolved even in sort of continuances without findings, without necessarily a guilty plea. So that remains to be seen as to where the prosecutors want to take this. But it certainly will be dealt with on the scale at which it is brought, a misdemeanor, 2 counts, and I think that it will probably be resolved short of trial in some way.
Former Massachusetts Attorney General Martha Coakley and News Center 5 legal analyst. Martha, thanks for your time on a busy day.
Thanks, Martha.